Welcome to Bad Dog Agility, a podcast helping you reach all of your dog agility goals. Whether it's competing under the bright lights of the televised finals at Westminster or successfully navigating a homemade course in your own backyard, we'll bring you training tips, interviews, and news about the great sport of dog agility. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
The show starts with your hosts, Jennifer, Esteban, and Sarah.
I'm Jennifer.
I'm Esteban.
And I'm Sarah, and this is episode 300. Today's podcast is brought to you by hitaboard.com and the new Teeter Teach It, an easy-to-use tool that controls the amount of tip on your teeter so you can introduce motion to your dog in a gradual way. Go to hitaboard.com for the new Teeter Teach It and other training tools and toys. Use discount code BDA10 to get 10% off your order. That's hitaboard.com. Today, we're going to be talking about all the different ways that you can use your trialing to help improve your dog agility. And I think that there's more reasons for trialing here than a lot of people have thought about. And that's why we wanted to put this podcast together and really give you a different way to view your trialing and the goals that you set for yourself every time you go to a trial. So we're going to start. We have 11 reasons here for why you might want to trial your dog. And we're going to start with the most obvious. So my number one reason, not number one as in most important, but first reason in the list is to get titles, right? A lot of times that's everybody's first goal. They want to get that novice title, the open title, get into masters. If it's your first time doing agility at all, that first title, that novice title is really, really exciting. So what do you guys think? Titles.
I have a dog right now who my goal, my whole objective and why I'm trialing her as early as this weekend is to get her mock. That's her number one goal. So getting titles. In her case, I want the mock so I can enter Westminster.
Exactly, which is another subcategory coming up. But yes, getting titles because of the titles, but also getting titles because they unlock other things. So the second reason that I have, and this doesn't really apply until you get to the master's level, and this is, I suppose, a little bit more AKC specific, but is to get points. So once you get to the master's level, now you can start accruing points. You need the points to get mock. So it's kind of a subset of getting the title, but you also need points to qualify for certain events like the Invitational. Now, one of the things that I wanted to point out about both of these things is that you should really be thinking about what your goal is. So for instance, if your goal is to get a title, which title? Right? If you want to get if you want to get your novice title so that you can move to open, so that you can move to masters, so that you can start getting points for mock, then the titles you want to get are in standard and jumpers, right? Time to beat titles aren't going to help you on that goal. Fast titles aren't going to help you on that goal. Premier titles aren't going to help you on that goal. So we want to kind of get specific about what it is we're trying to get out of the trial. And I like this idea of having a goal for the trial because I think to some extent, everybody doing agility has to worry about time and money, right? They're finite resources. Different people have different amounts of both of those, but they are finite resources for everybody. And so if your goal is to get to masters and start getting points and you have limited resources, you can put to the side, at least for some amount of time, fast, time to beat, and premier, right? And if your goal is to get points because you ultimately want to go to the Invitational, well, fast, premier, and time to beat don't give you points towards that particular event, right, Jen?
That is correct. And along the same lines of getting points, what I thought of when I saw this on your list was actually a year that I was going for top 10 points for USDAA. So the Q did not matter for my championship title. I already had my badge. And the legs did not count towards nationals qualifications. They were truly runs that I was entering to try to gain points for top 10 rankings. So very, very similar, just looking at different example in different organization, that same idea of what is the goal, what is the objective, and the idea of those points not leading towards any other event or any specific title.
And I think that a lot of people, they kind of, they open up the calendar, they see that there's a trial, they enter everything that they're eligible to enter. And then they kind of think about the goal for the trial rather than being, I guess the point here is that you can be strategic about what you enter, and you can enter different things for different reasons, even within the same trial. Like you could definitely say, I would like to get the fast title. I need points for the invitational. And you could kind of have both of those goals at a single trial. But my point here is that you don't necessarily have to. If you have one overarching goal that you are going towards, you can be strategic about your trialing.
Well, maybe this is later on your list, but I remember when I was getting ready for AKC Nationals each year, I think I would be doing like all 4 classes. Not fast, not time to beat. Basically, I never do those. And then, so I'm doing jumpers and standard, and then premier jumpers and premier standard, right? So 4 classes. But as soon as AKC Nationals was done, like the very next weekend, getting ready for tryouts, you have like, I want to say like a month or 2. I'm not sure if I'm remembering that correctly, but you got a month or 2, just a couple of weeks to get ready. And you want the dog to start getting used to backsides, and you want the courses to be much more complex, because I think now with the premier classes over the past couple of years, there's been a huge divergence in AKC course design, where the masters and excellent level courses are pretty straightforward. And so I didn't want my dog like seeing those courses all the time, like getting used to that. I'm like, hey, now I want you to think that every single jump could be a backside or a throttle. You're going to have 5 or 6 different options at every decision point. It's a more complex decision tree for the dog. So I would just run the 2 premieres. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. We've talked about it a little bit, but number 3, qualify for events. So again, there are going to be runs that matter for qualifying for events and runs that don't. So I remember for USDAA, we used to always just do enough to go to the tournaments, right? We didn't really worry about the titling because it wasn't our primary venue. So we wouldn't worry about titling classes, but we would go and we would do the Grand Prix and the steeplechase, but we would only do it as long as it took, as many shows as it took to get qualified for nationals. Ooh, right?
Yeah, I know when you're qualifying for nationals, in AKC, you need double Qs.
Yes.
Right. 2 Qs in a day. So let's say you've got all your points already.
Yeah.
And you're not worried about titling at all. So if you botch the first run, like right away at 8 a.m., people are like, hey, I'm packing it up, especially if it's on a Sunday. Like if it's a 3-day show or a 2-day show and it ends on Sunday.
And the Cowboys play at 3 p.m. I'm just saying.
You're like, hey, I'm just going to drive 3 hours back home, and I'll be home by noon eating lunch. And so you might take off rather than staying.
Right. Exactly. All right. So now we're going to so those are kind of, to me, the obvious reasons. But even there, I feel like people aren't necessarily thinking about why they're there and being strategic about their time and their money. So now let's talk about some of the other reasons that you might go to a trial. So number 4, bring a puppy for socialization and being in the environment. So obviously when they're old enough to legally be there, but this is a great reason because you don't even have to be entered. With that dog, you could just bring the puppy along with another dog that you're competing with, but just having the puppy there, and it kind of changes like the way you structure your time at the trial, right? When we show up with our puppies, we are all about like getting them out very regularly, doing different things, moving away from all of the action and tugging with them, treating them a lot, making it a really positive experience, making sure we take them to the bathroom a lot. It's like all about the puppy.
Yeah, there are going to be some trials, though, you need to check where there are space limitations or creating limitations. So they will say specifically, and including some national events like no unentered dogs.
Right.
Like, don't bring them.
And I would say this reason is one that I take into account when looking to travel to new locations. A lot of us, especially in the Midwest, we all have a facility within a couple hours and we do all our shows at the local facility. But when I get a young dog that I'm looking to socialize, I might say, hey, I'm going to take that little extra drive, or I'm going to do an overnight in a hotel. So not only is it maybe a reason why to trial, but why to enter a specific trial over another one or a certain location over another one.
Yeah, exactly. All right, going along kind of the time frame of new dog. Number 5 is to FEO before debut. So that's for exhibition only. And that means you can bring your toy into the ring. So, I think that now that that's available, that is an absolute, I would just use that for every new dog I was trialing with. I would go in with my toy into the ring, kind of bridge that gap between the dog having experience at home or at a class setting and bridging the gap to the full run, no toy, start to finish, having that opportunity to be in the trial environment, to have a lot of the aspects of a trial, but also some of the aspects of training, being able to take the toy into there and pick whatever I want to work on. And then along the FEO, I think also FEO for specific issues. So you've got a dog that's been blowing their contacts. You need to work on it. You've been retraining and you enter for exhibition only to work on that specific issue. You go into the ring, you do, 5 A-frames in your 2 minutes or whatever it is, you reward the dog. So FEO for specific issues is another great reason to go to a trial. Reason number 7 is to enforce criteria. So sometimes, again, if we're working on contacts, start line, you may need to take some trials where you go in knowing if my dog breaks, I'm going to lose this run and I'm going to fix it, right? It doesn't matter if they, were legal, right? You're not doing a FEO. You're doing a real run. It could be a cue. The dog comes off of the A-frame without stopping, but they hit the yellow. They could still get the cue. But you came into this trial knowing that you needed to put a stop to this like leaping behavior and using this, throwing away this cue to make a point to your dog that the criteria still matters. So I think that a lot of times when we're helping people, we'll tell them, you need to be very sure that in your next trial, you are enforcing that criteria. I know Esteban feels very strongly about this.
Yeah, it's an opportunity to train and teach your dog. I think the 2 periods of time that good trainers do their contact work, where they're working on criteria, is immediately after a big event, when you've basically let the dog blow through their contacts, right? And they're going to give you some fly-offs. So, kind of the start of the season or the event right after. That's always tricky when you have 2 big events really close together and only 1 or 2 trials in between. And if you only have 1 trial, maybe 2 or 3 days of showing, you have 3 standard runs. You kind of got to think, how am I going to distribute my standard runs? Like, how am I going to do this? And then the second period of time would be right before a big event, right? When you want to shore up those contacts, right? So you're going to notice that good handlers are going to park their dogs a little bit on the contacts in the hopes that they'll be a little stickier at big events. Now, whether it works or not is another issue. I'm just saying that that's stuff that you will see.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Number 8 is to practice a specific skill. So here, we're not necessarily going for the cue. We may be working on a skill like front crosses. And so I know you've mentioned this on the podcast. Both of you have mentioned this on the podcast multiple times, showing up and saying, okay, I'm going to do all fronts on this run, right? To really practice my front crosses, even though, maybe I typically do more rears, or I'm going to do all rear crosses on this run to make sure that my rears are nice and sharp. We talked last week about designating a run where you are running to win. You are running all out. You are pushing for that extra speed so that you don't just show up at the big event and suddenly you're pushing and your dog is like, I don't know what you're doing. Why are you acting crazy? Right? Or running to cue, really putting on yourself that the purpose of this run is to qualify no matter what. I'm going to be conservative. I'm going to, if I get a big wide turn, I'm going to do everything I can to bring it in and keep it a cue rather than, letting it be an in cue run. I think that practicing a skill can also be map based. So it might not have been your goal for the trial. It might not be something you thought about ahead of time, like I need to work on pushing my dog, or I need to work on being conservative. But maybe you look at the map and you say, okay, I could handle this with X maneuver, but it is a really nice setup for this other maneuver that I have been working on in practice and I haven't had the opportunity to try in a trial. So looking at this map, I'm going to go ahead and do my first German turn in a trial, something like that. So I think that that can be kind of in the moment, but it's something you should keep in the back of your mind every time you go to a trial and you're looking at the map. Think about what options are available, what you might be able to practice on that run. Do you do some of that, like as you're getting ready for like international events? Do you see things in Masters or in Premier where you're like, okay, I'm going to try X?
Absolutely. And I don't know that it would be a reason that I would or wouldn't enter a show as much as it would be a goal within a run. So I entered a show and I say, okay, as you said, this goal, no matter what, I'm going to run like I would if it was round 1 at AKC Nationals versus we're 3 months away. I've got time to test my skills. I spent some time really working on rear crosses. I don't love it as a strategy, but I'm going to go ahead and try that rear cross here to figure out, can I now bring it into the ring and work on and practice the skill, not just in a very controlled situation. I mean, we talked about it before because for me, a lot of trialing is to practice a skill because my training environment is so sterile. I train by myself. There's no other dogs. There's no other people. So to go to a trial, it's a big jump. So I'm using that very much for a practice situation for getting ready for those big events.
Yeah, let me ask you a question, Jen. Do you collect ribbons? Like, how often do you collect ribbons?
That has modified over the years.
Yeah, me too. I want to hear yours.
It used to be, in the beginning, everything. Yeah. And then it was, okay, placements. And then it was, okay, titles. And then it was, at one point, I was collecting mock ribbons. And I don't even collect those anymore. I collect ribbons from like big events, like national events. But even at nationals, I don't typically do much with the like individual round placements or like the clean round ribbons. It's like if I make it to finals, the finals ribbon. And a lot of times it's just so that I can like take a nice photo on Sunday or Monday. And then once I have the photo, a lot of times they end up in a drawer. Although I do have a very pretty display case and trophy case that I put them in, but I don't take many of them home with me. I have a record book that I take the stickers and I put the stickers in there so I can keep track of everything. But the ribbons themselves is mostly for the photo op.
That's so funny because I've had the exact same experience. I think Sarah had too. When you start in agility, my reason for going to trial was getting those ribbons, getting the cue. And in order to get the in order to get the ribbon, you had to get the cue, right? And placements, of course, better than non-placements. I was all about that. Starting in Texas, this is like 20 years ago, they used to call out announce the winners, right? Like the placements, right? Everyone would crowd around the table and they would read it out and then everybody would clap and stuff. And then it reached a point after several years where they just left it out. It was like self-serve.
Right.
Go find your own sticker, like stick it on the ribbon yourself and then take it home. And then years later, many dogs later, boxes of ribbons later that you end up throwing out. You're like, okay, I don't even need to take the ribbon. I don't even need to take the ribbon. And I know with the most recent dogs, like I just wasn't even bothering with the ribbon. And sometimes they offer toys and I would take them if they're useful, like a food bowl. But if they're like squeaky toys or something that I'm never going to use, like I just leave them there. Like you don't need to get them. And the thing that changed that though, well, I guess two things. So I was running other people's dogs in a lot of spots. And so those owners like the,
pretty ribbons.
They like the, yeah. And just like you mentioned about the photo op, right? So social media, I think kind of reversed that. So there are a lot of trials where if I'm not going to share anything, then I'm not going to pick up the ribbon. Like I just leave it there. To me in my head, I'm now thinking that I'm probably saving clubs a lot of money by not using all their ribbons, right? They have to spend money.
Just going to comment that a big shift for me was when I started holding trials and I had to buy the ribbons. And so I'd look at every ribbon differently and open up these boxes and go, oh my God, that's hundreds of dollars there. So now that I have to buy the ribbons to hold the trials, it does put a different perspective on things.
That's so funny. Yeah. I was going to ask if y'all had ever taken the ribbon to take the picture and then put the ribbon back.
I have.
All the time.
Pre-COVID.
The time. Absolutely.
Right. Exactly.
That is so funny.
But that's more exactly trials right. Even have, and we have this now, like the photo room, the photo op, the photo station.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And it's put up just so you can go over and like do your photos. So like we have a different backdrop each month. So right now it's Valentine's Day with a red table and some little pillows that say "Be Mine." And you can go over, take your photo with your ribbons. And then a lot of people walk right back over and return their ribbons.
That's awesome.
And there's no judgment here. Like I am not being judgmental. That's the whole point of this podcast, right? There's so many different ways to approach trialing. But it's just funny because the way I approached trials 20 years ago with my first agility dog is very different from how I approach agility with a current dog that you're trying to get ready, not just for nationals, but to, make the finals or win nationals or whatever. It's, the local trials mean something different.
Right.
You're going to use them differently.
Right. And we have three more, but before we even get there, we're kind of talking about the lessons learned here is that it's not just about no judgment from us. It's also about giving people different ideas for what they can do, but also giving you the idea that the people around you may have different reasons for being there than you do.
Right.
And so we've talked on other podcasts about how, you would have a double Q on the line, but your dog, doesn't hold criteria on the A-frame, but it was technically legal. And people are like, why didn't you go on? And you're like, well, that's not my goal, right? My goal isn't the Q. My goal is, to make sure that my dog has understanding of their contact criteria. And so, just know that other people around you are there for different reasons, and all of the different reasons have merit depending on the goals that person is working towards, right? The person who needs those points and it's the last weekend before the invitational cutoff, it may be totally valid for them to let their dog blow through that A-frame to get those 20 points that may be the difference between making it or not, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So I really like giving people the room to have their own reasons for being there. All right. So we are on number 9, and I call this checkpoint information gathering. So I've advised several people to kind of go down the path. They'll ask I'm not sure if my dog is ready for, the trial. We've been doing great in practice, or their dog has had issues. I think it's especially dogs that have environmental issues. So they have not been trialing. Maybe for COVID, they haven't trialed for a year. They're trying to bring their dog back. They want to know how best to do it. And I say, checkpoint, enter a trial. Enter one day, maybe 2, because sometimes I think dogs can be better on the second day once they have a chance. But enter one trial and then reassess. So my point in putting this here as its own goal is this is information gathering, which means you can't fail at this goal. But you have to really put yourself in the mindset of, I am here to gather information on where my dog is mentally, where they are with their skills. So this could be information gathering on your contacts, on your start line, on your dog just working in general in an environment. But the purpose is to get information. And when you go in with the goal of getting information, you should not then be upset when you don't get a double Q. Because that wasn't the goal, right? The goal was the information. And so I like to tell people who are unsure if their dog is ready, do one trial. And if it doesn't go well, don't enter a trial for another, 1 to 2 months. Work on whatever the issue was that you were working and then enter one trial again. If you're unsure, don't enter 4 weekends in a row and just keep going back and back and back and getting frustrated, right? So that's what I mean by a checkpoint, one point in time and then take time off again.
I suggest this a lot when people are retraining a behavior. I see it a lot with start lines and contacts, but somebody wants to make the transition from a stopped A-frame to a running A-frame. So I tell them, okay, pull out a standard for a while. You need to break while you retrain. They retrain and I say, okay, let's enter one trial. Let's see where it's at. Don't enter a bunch, because if it's not good, you don't want to be forced into weekend after weekend. Enter one trial, see where that A-frame is at, and then we can reassess from there. And it's either good and now you can enter more, or you're going to be glad you're not in there in anything else so that you can keep working on it. Same thing with retrains on the dog walk. I see that a lot. Start line, procedures, pull them from some trials, take a break, enter one trial, and gather information about whether or not what you're doing is working.
Exactly. Perfect. All right. So number 10, exposure to surface. I almost forgot about this one. And then somebody asked in our VIP group about practicing on dirt before nationals. And I thought, yes, we absolutely do that. I remember we would practice mostly on turf. And then if nationals was going to be on dirt, we would, like you said, go the extra 30 minutes to the different place that has dirt to give our dogs some exposure running on that surface.
Absolutely super common here. We have mostly turf. And so before big events that are on dirt, you'll see people travel further distances or enter trials that they wouldn't otherwise do just to get on that surface.
And then our last reason here, number 11, is social. So this may not even involve your dog, right? You can go to a trial to support a friend who is going for their mock or is going to have their mock celebration. Or I've had birthday parties at the trial because half of my friends are all there anyway for the trial, right? And so, we have birthday cake and stuff like that. Being there for your friend's debut, just going to visit with people.
Reliant Dog Show.
Yeah, the Reliant Dog Show is always a fun one.
All the other venues.
Mm-hmm. The shopping.
Shopping.
Know a lot of people that will enter shows or go to shows for the shopping and the vendors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even like nationals, I think if, I'm not sure that I would make a cross-country trip. But if I lived within, 4 or 5 hours of nationals and I didn't have a dog that was going, I would go for the environment, for visiting with people that I don't normally get to visit with, for the shopping and all of that. So I think social is absolutely a reason to go to a trial with or without your dog.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what trials are like. I know, Jen, you've been out there, but I haven't trialed since COVID started, and that's because we had puppies and they don't know how to do anything. They're still working on the contacts, but they're 2 now. They're soon to be 3. I think the poodle may just have turned 3. Anyway, debut. It's coming.
It's coming.
Next couple of weeks, so we'll be back to trialing. For sure, I think the social aspect is such a big part of trialing. I can remember the times where I'm like, hey, what's the next show you're going to be at? Like, checking in with somebody, like, I'm going to be in Dallas in 2 weeks. Are you going to that trial? Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll see you there. Jen, be honest. Have you ever made someone come with you to a trial when they didn't really need to go or want to go, just so you wouldn't have to go by yourself?
I wouldn't say I made them. I
of course you wouldn't say that.
Influenced, strongly encouraged,
coordinated,
them to attend so that I would not have to go alone.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that speaks to the social component of dog agility, not just between handler and dog, but between handlers.
Absolutely. All right. So I think we kind of did our wrap up mid podcast there because we were talking about the different goals that you have. But I hope this gives you some good ideas for how to structure your trialing, how to really just change how you think about it so that you can make progress in your goals, but also so that you can feel better about trials where you don't get the conventional reward of qualifying runs, ribbons, titles, and instead get something else out of your trialing experience. And that's it for this week's podcast. We'd like to thank our sponsor, hititboard.com. Happy training.
Thank you for listening to Bad Dog Agility. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information, updates, and links to all our socials, just check out our website, www.baddogagility.com. If you haven't already signed up for our email subscription, we would love to have you join the BDA community. Until next time, take care.